So this beat I have right here is an older beat of mine. I plan on an artist singing in the chorus here. It's a very musical chorus, and then having some type of rapping going on during these parts, which would be considered the verses. So if you don't know how songs are made up, basically they are made up of choruses and verses, and maybe an introduction and a bridge, which could be considered this part of the song. So an introduction would be the introduction of the song, some type of lead in, and then a verse, and then a chorus, and then a verse, and the chorus, and then a verse, and then a bridge, and then finally a chorus. And this is a standard way of putting a song together. It's one of the reasons I picked this song. It's important to notice the different ways a song can be put together. I like to think there's not rules in music, but at the same time, you need to know that the rules that a lot of people stick to are like these. So with that being said, let's go in and talk about how to do stuff within this window here, this playlist window. So if you're brand new to FL and you watch my other video, we talked about what these windows are and how to find them. And if you haven't seen that video, they're right up here. All your windows in FL can be found right here. So in this window right here, it's called the playlist editor. This is where you'll compose. And so if I go in here and you look at all these blocks looking things, these are called patterns. And so if I come in here, all these patterns are individual and can be moved wherever I want them. So to move patterns around, I'm going to show you the shortcuts, and I'm not even going to show you the long way, because that's a waste of time, and that's a waste of your time too. So the first shortcut I want to talk about is right click and left click. Right click is how you delete. It's not really a shortcut, but that's how you delete. And so to place a pattern down, you'll click on a pattern either here, over here, or up here, and select the pattern you want. And then once you've selected it by left clicking, you can click it in. You can place it where you want it. Okay, so right click, left click. The next shortcut is undo and redo. And how you undo and redo something is, if I were to accidentally delete this or delete it on purpose, and I wanted to hear what this sounded by itself, I could delete that by right clicking and then listen to this by itself, right? And then I could, say I didn't like that, I could go back by doing Control Z and then hit Control Z and Control Z as many times as I want. But the problem with this is I can only undo and redo. I can't keep undoing. So what happens if I delete this one, this one, this one, and this one? Well, if I do Control Z, it's only going to do the last one in time. So to go back further, you'll hold Control Alt and Z at the same time. So if I hold Control Alt Z at the same time, every time I hit Z, if I'm holding Control and Alt, it's undoing it back to the time of the last remembered history. And so you can run into a problem I want to talk about really quick, and that is you can run out of undos. Say I were to delete all these in this order one at a time. Well, how many undos was that? Well, in FL, if you go to options and general settings, there's a certain amount of undos you can do, or history levels. So if you look right here in the general settings, this number, I think, starts out, it's way down if you have your FL set at the default state, it's way down low. So I recommend turning this up as high as you can get it without having any type of memory issues, or until your computer starts slowing down. So I say to bump this up as high as you can get it. That way, if something happens, you're able to go back in time, like I can do right here. Well, I can't do it now because I've already messed with my undos. So the next thing I want to talk about is moving patterns around. And there's basically three main shortcuts to moving patterns around. And the first shortcut is P as in pen or pencil or point. And when you hit it, you'll notice the icon or the cursor changed. And I can come in here and I can click a pattern like this one, and I can click it in, right? That exact pattern wherever I want it. Well, this is nice because I have control of where I'm putting it, but the problem is I'm going to have to go one at a time. So say I'm putting together a little chorus here, and I'm lining everything up, right? Well, I'm gonna have to go one at a time until I get to the very end. So to do multiples at a time, you'll hit the B key or brush, and the brush key allows you to paint in as many as a time, and they'll all be in sync with each other. And then the next key I want to talk about is the E key, and the E key is like the select all key. It allows you to come in here and select multiple parts at the same time, like I'm doing now. So I can select this, and then I could move it. I could move it over here, exactly where I want it at the same time. This way I don't have to completely rebuild my compositions from scratch. I wouldn't have to do one piece at a time and have to line those up by themselves. So that'll really save you some time. And all your keys in the playlist editor, all your tools can be found right up here at the top. So everything I'm talking about, P as in point or B as in brush, are right here. So if you notice when I hit B, you can see up at the top it's changing as I hit it. So I recommend you just learn the shortcuts and don't even fool around with this up here, because this right here is going to take a lot of time. And the worst thing you want to be doing is making a song is thinking about what keys you're going to, what buttons you're looking for and where they're at. So just learn the shortcuts right now. So finally, the last key I want to talk about is the Alt key. And the Alt key allows you to move things around in super small increments. So if I come in here and I try to line this up, you'll notice that these are not lined up perfectly, or at least the front of these isn't. So say I wanted to line this up exactly with this track right here, the beginning of this track. So if I click on this and I move it, just left clicking and dragging, what's happening is it's snapping to the nearest line. So if you look up here at the top, you'll see that it says snap and then it's saying it's already on line. Well, you could come in here and you could change these to the exact step or line you want it to snap to, but I have a faster way to do it. And the faster way to do it is to hold Alt and then left click and drag. And this way, you'll notice that you can move it in the smallest of increment that FL allows you to do, and without having to mess with any snapping or steps up here. You won't have to change it. You just hold Alt and drag. So that's going to save you a lot of time. So that brings me to the next topic I want to talk about, and that's the piano roll. In the piano roll, you can use all the shortcuts in the same way that you can in the playlist editor. So everything that I'm talking about, moving the patterns around, applies in the piano roll. So these particular notes, I can move them the same way. So I'm hitting E and I'm selecting this key, and then I'm pushing P and I can move this key around. So everything works the same way. So whenever I'm in the piano roll, I can either play in a melody or I can click in a melody. So say I wanted to add another key to this chord here, I could simply click in the particular key that I wanted and sync it on time. So to record something in the piano roll, up here at the top, you'll notice this button right here. And this button is the switch between the playlist editor and the step sequencer. So if you'll notice, when I click on the switch right here, it's going in between the piano roll and the playlist editor. So what that means is, if it's on the piano roll here or the step sequencer, which are basically the same thing, because everything you do takes place in the step sequencer first, because you have to make your patterns before you put them into the playlist. So when I make a melody or I make a chord here in the piano roll, I need to be in the piano roll, so that way I only hear this particular part. Now, if I wanted to record something on top of, say, another part in here, I could put it on the song and then push the record button. So I'm going to go ahead and record something real quick so I can show you how you record. So what you do is you'll want to go either in here or in the playlist. The only difference is going into the playlist and recording is it's going to start recording whenever you start playing, right? So I went ahead and played that along, and I have a few chords here. So whenever I played this along, you'll notice that I wasn't exactly on time perfectly. So a big shortcut key I want you to learn right now, so you won't have to play perfect, and you also won't have to fix all your mistakes. So, and that shortcut key is Alt Q, and it quantizes, and all quantizing does is it moves each key to the closest line, so it will line everything up. So this key right here, it doesn't always do it perfectly, but at least it moved it to a line, so now all I have to do is line it up with the rest of them. And just go ahead and go back, check, make sure everything's lined up. If everything's lined up, it should play correctly. So whenever you put together a pattern, you always want to drag it to the beginning, because this way it'll make it less confusing later on whenever I have a pattern. So you'll notice here, it's starting right at 0. Right. Okay, so now you know how to record and put in a chord. The next tool I want to talk about is the step sequencer. And this is the step sequencer. So the step sequencer is your tool that you will create all your patterns in. So if you look right here, all the grayed out ones, these are samples, and if you look down here, all the colored pink ones are your plugins. So whenever you come over here to the left side, and yours won't be auto hiding like mine is, but over here at the top you'll find packs. So if you go into packs, you'll have all your samples here. So if I pick a sample and I bring it in like this, click and drag it in, it's going to put it where I drag it in between these slots right here. So if I let go, it just put it in right there. So now I can come in and I could click in a pattern that I wanted. Well, to make a new pattern, what you do is you come up here to the top and you click Find First Empty or Shift F4. So when I click that, it gives me the prompt to name it something. So I'm just going to name this Test. So now that I have this pattern open, it's separate from all the rest of these patterns. Now I have an individual pattern that has no other melody on it. So I can come in here, find a sample like this one, and go ahead and click something in. So if I play this, right, I have a pattern going. Then I can come into my kick and play something. The next thing I want to talk about is the knobs over here and the switches. So this knob over here, just like in a real studio, you have the option to pan. And if you don't know what panning is, it's moving a sound either left or right. You have two speakers in stereo, hence the word stereo, not mono. Mono means one, stereo means two. So in stereo, I can push a sound either to my left speaker or my right speaker. And how you do that is you left click and you drag either up or down. And that allows you to move your sound. And then over here on the left side of that, you have these little blue lights. And these represent switches. So you can mute your tracks or you can solo your tracks. So to mute a specific track, you just click on this light, and if you want to solo a particular track, you right click on it and click solo. So if I just wanted to hear this one in this pattern, I could just listen to this one by itself by soloing it. So to reset it, you click solo, right click solo again. The next thing I want to talk about is the length of patterns. So say you're making a pattern and you put in here a kick, a kick, a kick, right? And you're playing this, right? I got a little kick pattern going, but say I don't want to keep making individual patterns like this. I want to save myself time and go ahead and make a really long pattern. So now I can make it more interesting and not have to make ones by themselves, right? Or say let's go 8. right? And then I could come here with the snare. Right? So as a general rule, whenever you're putting together a beat, there's two parts that make up a beat, and that's the kick and the snare like I have going on here. So I got the kick hitting, and then I got my snare that's consistent. So whenever you listen to music, if you ever find yourself clapping along with music, that clap represents the snare. So just remember, whenever you make a beat, the easiest thing to start out with always is the snare. And the snare is always just that consistent. So if I solo the snare here, right, it's really simple. So if you can figure out where you want your snares, then you can put in your kicks. So I recommend starting with your snares first if you're new to making beats. Right? And so I got a beat going on here. I got a little, I could add in, I could stack some snares, or I could stack some kicks. Right? Or I could, let's see, what's the snare doing right here? Stack these up. Okay, so whenever you're putting down, say you want to put down a hi-hat or a crash like I'm about to do here, instead of going in here and clicking in every one, you can right click and then click this fill each 4 steps. So each one of these is considered a step. So if I come over here and click fill each 4 steps, right, so I can come over here to do this. So I can come here and click fill every 2. Right? So the possibilities are endless. You can do whatever you want, but I just wanted to show you kind of how you set up a beat. Whenever you're putting together a beat though, make sure that you can play around in a window like this, in this step sequencer, but make sure you make all the parts separate, so that way later on, when you're in this window, like I have here, I have this kick, and then I have this snare up here. They're separate patterns. So what that would look like, it would be just the snare. Just the snare. Right? Which would look like that. See? And the only difference is I have this at 16 and the other one was at 8. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about is samples versus plugins and what the differences are. So, and how do you find them? So, you kind of saw me come over here and drag in some samples from over here. But how do you add in a plugin? Well, up here at the top under channels can also be called a plugin or plug-in channels. And over here is where you have your virtual instruments, which can also be thought as a plug-in. And so a virtual instrument works the same way as, say, a real instrument does, and it has all the individual keys already pre-recorded. So you don't have to do any mapping or programming on your keyboard. So I could come in here and go to, say, this classical category and then pick a platinum hit and hit a key on my keyboard and get that note response back without any type of artifacts. So what I mean by artifacts is, if you were to add in a sample over here, say this ring right here, and I'm playing this ring down. So this ring here, what's happening is the computer is pitching that ring up and down according to which key I hit. So if you notice very slightly, what the computer's doing is speeding up the key, basically, or the pitch. So that's not the same as a pre-recorded sound. A pre-recorded sound is an actual instrument already recorded, right? It's already been recorded, and it's got the fidelity of that exact key. So you're going to get much better playback and control over an actual instrument than you would an individual sample. So why would you use a sample over a plugin, right? Well, a sample, you can come over here and you can find the exact sound that you want. Say a kick, say with your kick or your snare, you're not going to be pitching your kick and your snare. They're going to be consistent all the way through a beat, which most of the time they are, unless you have like a bass, but that's different. So on my kick, once I bring my kick in, right, let's find a kick here. So say I want this kick, right? I click it and I drag it in. This kick right here, this is the wave of that kick. This is all I'm getting with that sample. So with this sample, once I have it brought in, I can click it in and everything's going to work the way I want it to. Now, if I were to bring in a plug-in, I would have to play in or click in the plug-in in the piano roll, right? If I come in here and I just click in some piano keys, well, that's going to be the key of C, and I'm not going to get any change in this, or any pitch change in this virtual instrument here. So, as a rule of thumb, whenever you bring in kicks, the only adjustments you have to do, kicks or percussion instruments, is to try to match that kick in the key of the song. And what I mean by that is, listen to the song and listen to the kick along with it. So if I have a melody, I've already created a melody, and I bring in a kick, I need to make sure that kick is relatively within the same key of that song. So if the key is being played in A, like, A, just look on your keyboard, A. So let's find an instrument here. So if I have a song and the song starting on A, I'd want that kick to be playing along with that melody. So how you do that? Well, if you go over here to the MISC right here, and you notice this is where it's defaulting to. It's defaulting to C. And this is the way the computer thinks about where the key is starting from. So if I right click anywhere, I'm now moving the starting position of that key. So that is one way of moving the moving. So now if I hit C on my keyboard versus now when I hit C, right? It's just changing the starting point of that key. So now I could change the starting point and then click in the pattern that I want up here, and it's going to play in that key. So another way to do that, if you click the reset button, it'll put it back to C. The other way to do that is to just play your song, and then right here where it says time, adjust this ever so slightly. I'm sorry, not time, I meant pitch. Yeah, it's pitch. Right, which is the same thing as what we were doing. But this way, you can easily change it and listen to it. Right, so you'll notice if I roll the pitch up really high, what it's doing is it's just speeding up the sound. It's because it's already a pre-recorded sound, the only way the computer can change the pitch is to speed it up. So keep that in mind whenever you're manipulating a sample. So in a plugin, to add a plugin, remember you go up here to channels and you add in a plugin over here. So I've already added in a bunch of plugins. So if I go over here to Nexus and I have this already selected and I were to hit a key, it's now playing this particular instrument in this virtual instrument. So in a virtual instrument, you'll have multiple parameters to change. And so if you look right here in the reverb category, I have all these options. So these are the options that you get in a plugin that you won't get in a sample. So keep that in mind when choosing between a sample and a plugin. So you get more control in a plugin than you would in a sample. So finally, that brings me to the final topic, and that is mixing. Now mixing, I could easily do three videos on just how this thing works right here. But for today, we're going to talk about on a really general scale. So whenever you create a beat, like I have here, I have all my parts. By the time that song's finished, I'm going to want to have every single sound, sample, plugin, whatever, linked in the mixer, right? So in this song, I think I have everything linked right through here. So these are all my instruments and samples. So how you link something is if you come over here to your step sequencer. If you come to your step sequencer and you go to say this sample here, so to link it to a track on a mixer, you have two ways of doing that. You can click on it and then drag in a slot that you want to put it at. So say 6 on the mixer, right? 6 and 6. Or you can click on it and right click, you can click on it and then right click the slot that you want to put it at. So if I click here on the sample and then come over here and come to this one, by the way, how you go through these is if you put your mouse cursor on this part of the mixer and you scroll, it allows you to go in between these. So if I go to this one right here, this empty insert 28, and I right click and I put link selected to this track, or Control L, right here. I've now linked this sound to the mixer. So why would you want to link something to the mixer? Well, the mixer gives you the final control of a sound. So like I was saying about samples and plugins, plugins give you more control over your particular sound you're going for. Well, now you have even more control over it. So now that I've brought it in here, I now have first of all, I have options to turn it up and down, the volume of it, which is right here. And I have a basic EQ right here that I can adjust with. High, mids, and lows, right? Just like on your car stereo or your boombox. Same theory. So if, say, I wanted to add a reverb to this, I could come right here, click this little drop down, and then come over here and go to a reverb. Or, yeah, we'll do this ozone reverb here. So now I have a reverb on this sample. So now that sample, right now I have if you're looking right here, I'm getting feedback from this reverb. So if I click see? So that's the general basics to manipulating a sound in the mixer. And so finally, on the mastering channel, I want to bring this up because whenever you open up a new project in FL, you're going to always have a mastering type of limiter or compressor on it, and it is FL limiter, Fruity Limiter. This is what it's going to look like when you open up FL. It's going to have something like this. Well, that's cool, but I don't always want that on a track because I don't want it to be limiting any of my sounds when I'm mixing. I want to hear I want to have complete control over the feedback of my computer. So I normally turn this off. So to remove a plug-in or a effect from your mixer here, you click this, and then you click this right here. You click replace, and you come up here to none. It's kind of a pain to remove something, but that's how you do it. You click that, replace, and then none. So now I just removed that limiter. So every time you open a project, I recommend removing that. There's no need for it. Well, that's all I have time for today. I'd hoped to go into more beat making, but there's just a lot to touch before we can really dive into beat making. as you know, you kind of have to learn the foundation before you can get started and really get creative with something. You know, you have to learn how to use a paintbrush before you can actually paint. So with that being said, leave a comment and let me know what you want me to talk about or go over. If it's shortcuts or playlist or a certain window or making patterns, let me know and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Go check out my SoundCloud. You can check out a bunch of sample beats I have there so you can get an idea of what I like to make, my style is. My SoundCloud is soundcloud.com/Caleb Dane, and you could just click the link below the video. But thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.